Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this, the 120th Annual General Meeting of the British Standards Institution. My name is John Hurst, and I am Chairman of the Board of BSI. I am delighted to be able to welcome many of you back in person for this AGM, following the disruption to our annual general meetings over the last 2 years as a result of COVID, pandemic, of course. I also welcome those joining us online, of course, but it's particularly nice to see some people in the room. It is 4 p.m, just in case you were uncertain, on Thursday the 19th of May 2022, which is the published start time of this year's AGM. I note, however, that at present we do not have the required quorum of 10 persons entitled to vote, being personally present. We'll therefore follow the procedure set down in Article 42 of our bylaws and wait for up to a further 30 minutes to allow sufficient persons to join the meeting. However, your time will not be wasted. While we wait, we'll have a presentation by our Chief Executive, Susan Taylor-Martin, covering the group's activities in 2021 and looking ahead to 2022. This will be followed by a presentation by Director General of Standards, Scott Steedman, on leading standards for the world. After those presentations, I and the rest of the board will be pleased to answer any questions you may have. And if you are joining us online, this may be done by typing and submitting your questions in writing on Teams. Messages can be submitted at any time until I close the session. Questions sent via Teams will be moderated before being sent to me to avoid repetition. Please do give your name and organisation when submitting your questions, whether in the room or online. So, as I say, joining me today are Susan Taylor-Martin, our Chief Executive Officer, and Director of General Standards, Scott Steedman. Also joining us is Sarah Dickinson, who is our new Chief Financial Officer. Sarah joined us in January of this year with over 25 years of experience, you don't look old enough, of financial experience, as well as a significant knowledge of digital transformation and scaling of B2B businesses. Most recently as Senior Vice President of Finance responsible for corporate finance functions at Expedia Group, Sarah has the skills to help us lead BSI into the next stage of transformation and growth. Sarah, you're very welcome. We look forward to working with you. Also present here today are my colleagues on the board, Alison Wood, a Non-Executive Director, Senior Independent Director and Chair of the Remuneration Committee. Douglas Hurt is Non-Executive Director and Chair of the Audit Committee. Stephen Page, Non-Executive Director, who is the board's representative on the Standards Policy and Strategy Committee, and Non-Executive Director Ian Lobley. Sadly, Tiffany Hall, another of our NEDs, is unable to join us because she has tested positive this morning with COVID. I hope she is able to join us online and is feeling not too unwell. I'm also delighted that we're once again joined by Dame Polly Curtis, who is our board advisor and chair of the Sustainability Committee. I'd also like to mention some other people joining us, either in person or online. Representing our auditors, PwC, is Alex Hookway. Thank you for coming. We also have representation from our Standards Policy and Strategy Committee, a number of BSI Standards Committee members, and a large number of BSI staff. And finally, I'd like to welcome Richard Sanders, who joins us online and is representing BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So I'm now going to hand over to Susan to give a brief overview of the group's activities in 2021 and 22, and then to Scott Steedman to talk about leading standards for the world. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end of these presentations. Susan.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you very much, John, and let me add my welcome. I joined BSI in January of last year, and when I joined, I was really struck by the calibre of the expertise and the passion our people have for helping our clients and our stakeholders deliver against their ambitions and affect positive change. And I had a sense that when I was standing up here last year that there is so much more that we could do as BSI, and we could have an even greater positive impact on the world. And I know now, nearly 18 months in, that that is absolutely the case. And we do indeed have a tremendous opportunity ahead. And by building on our expertise, our reputation for integrity, by focusing on our clients and our stakeholders' greatest challenges, we can embed the frameworks, the practices, the standards that create trust between consumers and companies and governments. And that fosters innovation and that fosters growth. And therefore, we can play our part in ultimately making the world a better place. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 topics. We're a purpose-led organisation, so I'm starting with that in terms of our purpose and our mission. And then I'm going to take you through the highlights of our performance last year. And then finally, I'm going to share sort of our sharpened strategic focus going forward. So with that, let's turn to this one first. So underpinning our organisation is a very, very important purpose. It's why we exist. We are inspiring trust for a more resilient world. And it speaks to the role that we can play in today's world, helping our clients and stakeholders navigate change, and the role that we can play in helping them and face many of the challenges that industries, our communities, indeed society are facing. The mission that we have is a very powerful one, and that's what really sort of governs our day-to-day activities. And again, it's about sharing knowledge and innovation and best practice to help people and organisations realise their potential and make excellence a habit, really helping people be the very best that they can be, helping organisations being the very best versions of themselves that they can be. And then underpinning that are these 3 core values, although one of them, I have to say, expertise may not be a value. It's still incredibly important to BSI because we're an organisation filled with experts and we deal with experts and we convene experts, so it's critical to us. Respect is also absolutely vital in terms of creating an environment where we share and where we collaborate, whether you're a colleague or whether you're a committee member. And respect is essential given our commitment to making sure that all voices are heard. And then finally, integrity. We're absolutely nothing without it. So we hold and we protect that very dear. If I think about performance last year, it's difficult not to start again with the fact that it was another year impacted by COVID and by restrictions, and I found myself couldn't bring my leadership team together for the first 5 months of the year. It was November before I managed to escape the UK shores and visit our BSI colleagues in the States. Sadly, also, we lost 2 colleagues, one in India and one in Russia, to the disease. And so the vagaries of not being able to kind of operate as we would like is nothing compared to clearly the loss of lives of colleagues of ours, which is just terrible. That said, it was an extraordinarily resilient performance, and that is thanks to, first of all, the commitment of all of our fantastic BSI colleagues around the world, the trust placed in us by our members, and by our clients and by our stakeholders, incredible commitment from our thousands of committee members and committee chairs, without whom we don't have standards, and the support of our accreditation and regulatory bodies. So a huge thanks to each one of those groups for all of the help and assistance and support they gave us last year in particular. Despite all of that, I have to say 2021 was a year of an exceptional, and I use that word really specifically, an exceptional financial performance. Our revenue was up 9%, profit was up 30%. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later on. I use the word exceptional really specifically because clearly our revenues rebounded very strongly through the year. And that was in every one of our business divisions, and that was in every geography, which is wonderful. What we do is effectively mission critical to our clients, and I think that shows just how resilient BSI is. What we do really does matter, because we allow our clients to access new markets. We help them accelerate their innovation. We help them build trusted relationships with their customers. We help them become more sustainable. Those are all mission critical things. And from a stakeholder perspective, what we try and do is really help them scale and mainstream change. So BSI can be a real agent of change. Now, from a profit perspective, some of that performance was due to that continued kind of COVID operating environment. You know, we couldn't travel as we once did. That boosted the remote delivery of a lot of our services. It slowed down to some extent our ability to invest through the year. But nonetheless, what's absolutely critical is that exceptional performance last year is going to allow us to really invest in the business kind of going forward for the future. And I think the final thing that I would say is just around 2021 was also this year of real forward momentum for the organisation. We strengthened our focus on clients and stakeholders across the organisation, and that means increasing our focus, for example, on the UK government as a client, as a stakeholder. But it also meant we designed a new client metric platform, which we're rolling out this year, which is vital. We sharpened our strategy through the year, and again here, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we worked future back and we combined that with an intense focus on our clients and stakeholders' greatest challenges, because that's where we can add tremendous value. And we accelerated our own digital transformation through last year. You know, the pandemic for BSI, as it did for every single organisation, absolutely brought front and centre how every business is now a digital business. And so we need to invest in our data, in our digital infrastructure, our digital operations and skills, and we have to strengthen our digital offerings for our clients. Now, in terms of the UK National Standards Body and the performance there and our focus, my colleague, Director General of Standards, Scott Stevens, is going to talk about that in a lot more detail in a moment, so I'm not going to labour this, but absolutely critically, you know, we are the UK National Standards Body, but that role is an international role. And so the UK's representation on the key international standards organisation is critical, and last year we secured our position on SEN and SENELEC thanks to fantastic work from Scott and the team, and that was incredibly important in terms of maintaining incredibly important position that the UK has in terms of making sure that we are there at the table in these key discussions around international standards. I'd also like to particularly, though, draw out a couple of things. The first is, last year we really upped the game in terms of our focus on sustainability in a couple of different ways. Scott will talk about the ISO London Declaration, where we are now making sure that every standard, every international standard, both the new ones coming and every existing one as it's revised, really takes into account climate science and the change that we need to make there. So that's critically important. We became very involved with the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change around voluntary carbon market. Again, critically important, and we raised the bar and we raised the visibility of BSI in a world that really hadn't heard very much about BSI, which is vital. And then finally, also we were involved in the UN's Our 2050 World, that's all around net zero. Again, fantastic initiative. BSI, again, putting our head above the parapet a little bit here and really making sure that we can help the world on some of the greatest challenges that are pan-country, global, where political solutions aren't enough. So this is where standards can really play a role. So some really good work there. And also on sustainability, I note that our first circular economy kite mark was issued by our assurance team last year in product certification. So again, fantastic work there. We redoubled our efforts on our digital transformation, and we aspire to lead the world in terms of digital audit. So we're at the very beginning of that. We lead the way in terms of what remote audit looks like, and that absolutely came to the fore through the pandemic over the last couple of years, but we really see a vision much bigger than that, and that's something for us to focus on. We also want to accelerate what we call smart standards, and these are standards that are machine applicable, readable and transferable. It's a key area of focus, but this is where the world of standards will be transformed. And again, BSI and the UK really want to lead that work. It's critical. And then finally, we opened 2 new innovation labs, one in Cambridge and one in Singapore. So we've now got 4 of those operating around the world. That's where we do wonderful experiments with clients and stakeholders around the world, where we're operating on the fringes, trying new things out and using technology like blockchain, Internet of Things, virtual reality, AI. All of these things are absolutely critical. And again, making sure that we've got physical spaces where we can do some of that innovation work, and we do it virtually too, is going to be absolutely critical to us. So I love the investment that we put into that last year. Underpinning all of this is the final bullet on this slide, which is we're nothing without a really healthy culture. And so an open, inclusive, healthy culture where people can do their very best work and can thrive is absolutely vital. And this is an area where last year, in partnership with our head of people, Alison, who's sitting in the audience today, we've had a real focus and will continue to do so, because this is an extraordinary organisation filled with wonderful people, and we really want to make sure that BSI is just a fantastic place to work. So, if I move now to kind of the financial performance, let me talk firstly, and I'm not going to go through, you're going to be very grateful, all of the numbers on this slides. I just want to kind of pick out a couple of key ones. We did deliver last year our highest ever revenues and profits, and we ended the year with an incredibly strong balance sheet. And the reason that that's so important, clearly, is that allows us to invest in the future. We had a 9% increase in group revenue to 585.6 million. And in fact, if you take out the effect of foreign exchange, that was up 13% last year, which is a very credible performance across the globe. Through changes in operating model, in partnership with our clients and accreditation bodies, I should say, and through streamlined operations and greater productivity, it also meant that we had this one-time improvement in our unit economics, and also due to the resilience of the business, we saw our gross profit margin increase from 50.1% in 2020 to 52.1% in 21. And then by holding our costs broadly pretty flat from a sales and distribution perspective, and also controlling our administrative costs and back office services, we improved the gross profit and the operating profit of the organisation. And as you can see, our operating profit rose to 83.1 million last year. So again, very impressive 30% increase on the previous year. That then really built up our cash deposits, and you'll see from the slide that cash and deposits went up to 187.1 million. That is what provides us with the essential capacity to invest for the long-term delivery of our business. So really critical. I've got a line on there talking about our pension scheme, and for the first time that I can remember, actually, I'm talking about a UK pension scheme surplus of 19.3 million. Now, what I should say is that's our accounting position. That's not an actuarial position. We've got our triannual actuarial valuation that's happening this year. So we'll be updating that, but clearly a really, really solid performance all the way around. And if I look at the kind of the cash flow, and again, I'm just going to pick out a couple of numbers. As I said on the previous slide, we've got really strong cash generation across the business, with 98.8 million generated from operations, and after cash paid out to the UK defined benefit scheme of 15.5 million last year. So super strong. That didn't stop us making some targeted investments last year, which we did on our information and communications technology infrastructure. And we did particularly focus on some of our client-facing technology last year. So, for example, the BSI Shop, which is our e-commerce platform, also British Standards Online, and our supply chain solutions screen. So some really good investments there. After all of that, we still increased our cash and deposits position by 55 million last year to that 187.1 million. So again, I'm going to state it for focus and to reinforce it. It's that cash generation that allows us now to really invest in the technology and the transformation across BSI that is absolutely essential to our future. Just to give you a snapshot of what that revenue picture looks like by our business divisions, and I'm going to start on the bottom right there with knowledge solutions. So knowledge solutions helps both shape standards at a regional, national and international level, and it shares those standards clearly and provides standardization services and technical assistance on a global basis. There we had a very steady financial performance last year with revenue up 3%, as you can see, to 67.4 million. We continued, while delivering on that, our real investment in the digital underpinnings of standards. And as I mentioned, that was our e-commerce platform. That was the next generation of standards. So these smart standards was another area that we invested. And also these smart standards. Again, that in particular, I think Scott will talk a little bit about that, but that is the future of what the standards world looks like. So extremely important that we're there leading on that topic. If I move to the left, we've got assurance services, revenue of 284.7 million last year, which was 8% growth. Again, really impressive from a growth perspective. You know, this is where we provide really mission critical services to clients to ensure that they can trade, to ensure that they can export. We're making sure that both processes and products are certified to the correct standards. Remote delivery was absolutely vital last year, as it was the year before in 2020, if you remember, and particularly from a training perspective, where 70% of our revenues were delivered digitally, delivered remotely last year. Product certification, which is also part of this world, grew slightly slower than it did the previous year, but that was the year it was really boosted by what we had to do around PPE. So again, really good growth story for assurance services. And then another very strong year for regulatory services. And if you remember, this is where we help our clients, who are medical device manufacturers, bring trusted life-saving technology to market in a really timely and predictable manner. Our growth there, we were up 10% in terms of revenue, was very much fueled by the big regulatory shift that we're seeing across the world, across Europe, which is from the MDD, the Medical Devices Directive, to the Medical Devices Regulation, the MDR. And we're seeing that growth continue through this year. We're a market leader in this field, and we want to continue to lead the market. And just to give you an idea of what we mean by sort of that technical, what does the technical assurance world look like? This is a world where we're really focused on what hybrid audit looks like. So a combination of people that are auditing organizations in person, but also remotely. We think, again, that can really deliver enormous value. During 2021, BSI was also redesignated as a full-service UK-approved body in this space, and we are currently the only organisation with that full-scope designation, which is important. And then finally, on the top left there, consulting services. So 2021 was a real year of recovery for consulting services in both of our lines of business. And just as a reminder, we've got two areas that we focus on with this very technical advisory work. One is around environmental health, safety, sustainability and security. And the other area is to do with cybersecurity and information resilience. And actually, this is a world that we're renaming digital trust consulting, and I'll come back to that phrase in a moment. But our revenue grew 11% last year. Again, if I stripped out foreign exchange, the business would be up 18% in terms of revenue. So again, a very credible recovery there. And the two spaces that we are focused on are areas of real challenge for our clients. And so we expect that demand to kind of continue because they're both extremely important. The division also includes a very interesting and important product for us, something called BSI Connect Screen. And for those of you who've got any interest in the world of supply chain, I really urge you to explore the product that we have there. I know this shouldn't be a sales pitch, but it is incredibly important in terms of understanding supply chain risk and resilience. And so it's a wonderful product that is adding tremendous value. And believe me, right now, that is the topic that is on everybody's mind in what we're increasingly seeing as a VUCA world. And by that, I mean a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. And that's certainly where we are today. So really important service that we provide. Now, if I switch from and change tack from looking backwards to 2021 to kind of looking forwards to 2022, we've talked a little bit, I mentioned earlier, that we've really sharpened our strategic focus. And you may be thinking, wait a minute, you've just had this fantastic year. You know, why are you refreshing the strategy? And the reality is, we believe that BSI could have this even greater positive impact on the world. But there are a couple of imperatives that we really need to take into account. And the first is that we've got to pivot at pace with greater commitment towards the future. So that's certainly thing one. And the second thing is, from the work that we've done and the research that we've done with our clients and stakeholders, there are two huge challenges where our clients are crying out for help and support and where we can do more. And the first of those is the broad area of sustainability. And the second one is around the topic that we talked about in terms of digital transformation. We are in a digital world, and clients are absolutely clamoring for help for providing trust in that new digital environment. Now, we want to build out our capabilities in both the sustainability and our expertise in this digital trust space. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to focus on quality, health, safety, and well-being. Those are foundational for BSI. But what we are saying is we absolutely want to amplify our expertise in these areas where clients desperately need help. One, around sustainability, and second, this idea of digital trust. And just to expand on that a little bit, in its simplest form, I think BSI has always been about providing trust to our clients and stakeholders in a physical world. We want to do that in this new digital environment. So it's a very broad space, but we're very focused on that piece around how can we help bring that same kind of trust to that environment. The proposition that we want to focus on is written up here, which is it's through shaping, sharing, implementing and certifying against standards, regulation, consensus-based practice. We're going to help our clients innovate, accelerate, and provide them and their customers with assurance. One of the critical things about this proposition is our focus on what our clients need, not what we have and what we can do, but what they need and how we can help them. That's one of the big cultural shifts that we're trying to drive across the business. So BSI, we want to stand for trust, integrity, and confidence. And our differentiators in this world are twofold. The first is we need to become deeply digital. Our experience through the pandemic was, just as our clients are facing this real transformation in terms of the digital environment they need to operate in, so do we. And therefore, we've got to absolutely become best in class in terms of how we use technology, both from an operational perspective, but also in terms of the services and the offerings of the future. So that digital requirement is very, very, very important for us. We've got to leverage technologies like AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, the Internet of Things, to ensure that we can deliver even greater value to clients. So that's the focus. The second thing is we want to be convening the ecosystem. And I think of that as today, we convene experts to create standards. We absolutely want to continue that. But through some of the work that we did this year, and Scott will speak to that, particularly around sustainability, we recognise that we can have a greater role than that. It isn't just the world of standards that we can help convene the right people. We've got this extraordinary capability of bringing together experts, stakeholders, broad communities to address key industry and societal issues. It is a huge strength for BSI and actually an unparalleled capability, but we want to take that to a different level and be that sort of trusted agent of change. So that is very much the two things that are going to differentiate BSI from others in the market. As a result of this, we do expect the organisation to grow, but growth in and of itself isn't our goal. What we're really focused on is how can we have a greater positive impact? So it comes back to our purpose. Our purpose is what motivates us, and our financial success is what allows us to invest in our purpose. So 4 things I'd love you to take away from this brief presentation and look back on last year. The first is BSI is a really strong, really resilient and deeply purpose-led organisation. The second is we believe we can have an even greater positive impact, but only if we focus on our clients and our stakeholders' greatest challenges. So that requires us to do something of a pivot. Our expertise in quality, health, safety and well-being and supply chain is absolutely foundational. And we're going to be amplifying that expertise in 2 particular areas. Sustainability is one, and not the whole breadth of sustainability. We've picked some key spots where we think we've got something that we could add. And this concept of digital trust. So again, if we port BSI into this new digital world, what is the kind of trust, what are the trusted services that we can provide to our clients? And then very critically, the exceptional performance that we had last year allows us to invest in that next stage of growth and that platform to have an even greater positive impact on the world. So with that, thank you. And I'd like to hand over to Scott Steedman.
Super. Good day. Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you, John. I'm delighted to be here again and to say a few words about leading standards for the world. And for those of you who recall Long Haul Flight, this actually was a light show that was designed for the G7 by the mayor of Hangzhou. And he put it on for BSI when we visited that day for a meeting. So just to remind you that the world is a big place out there. It's been a pivotal year for BSI in many ways, and I'm going to talk about a range of points in a little bit of detail, but I've just flagged up there some really innovative ideas. We put the idea of a climate action kit to ISO and IEC, and if you go online, you'll find case histories from all over the world, led by the UK. We launched the ISO General Assembly under the slogan, "The future has begun," which we thought was challenging during COVID, but actually turned out to be exactly the right slogan after all. I'll start with government, if I may, and say that 2021, of course, marked the end of transition. So it was the first year really of the new designated standards system, providing a presumption of conformity in Great Britain. Northern Ireland, where we obviously retain responsibility as national standards body, still operating under the EU system. So here we are, the only national standards body in the world that I know is supporting 2 jurisdictions for standards. Lots of work, particularly in the Department of International Trade. I've been privileged to be on the Strategic Trade Advisory Group, working with the Minister for International Trade, and that relationship has become increasingly close and productive. My team also participating in the expert trade advisory groups, work there, detailed work around the Singapore Digital Economy Agreement, Australia, and recently we've been having conversations about India and the Gulf. So lots of really interesting thought there about how you use standards in an innovative way to accelerate trade and innovation. Grenfell continues. We'll all be very familiar with that inquiry. New phases of the inquiry continue. And we've provided a lot of support for that to government, both in terms of evidence and through the Competence Standards Framework programme, which continues. And I was very pleased also that we recruited and brought on stream 2 excellent new staff to help us in supporting the devolved administrations in Scotland and also in Wales and Northern Ireland. And they're providing us with huge on-the-ground support for our engagement activities in these countries. So just also to flag perhaps there the Scottish Government's Vision for Trade, which was published recently and has specific references to BSI and their intent to cooperate with BSI in trade ambitions. So really pleased about the new level we've reached, perhaps, I would put it that way, in terms of engagement with government and the ministries and their activity. And a particular important part of that, of course, is the digital domain. And Susan's talked about the importance of that for our strategy, but really for the UK economy, for the global economy, this concept that we are transitioning from an old economy to a future digitally enabled economy where digitalization is part of everything is something we have to think about really very, very strongly. The world of standards is no longer just about product safety. Every product will have digital data, AI technologies embedded in it. So expanding our engagement within the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, has been absolutely fundamental. And for a couple of years now, we've been building that up. And it's led to some really super outcomes in terms of not only artificial intelligence, the Standards Hub, working with the Alan Turing Institute and the National Physical Laboratory, but also in telecoms and digital infrastructure space, where there are very serious national needs and a very, very keen interest in the role of standards to support future regulation, to support innovation and startups in the UK in the future of digital infrastructure. We have an excellent new digital strategic advisory group chaired by Dan Biles, who is also, sorry, not by Dan Biles, which is providing us with support on the digital strategy, and it sits alongside our sustainability strategic advisory group. Lots of work for the all-party parliamentary groups, particularly on the AI and ethics side of it, and on digital services innovation. So you see there BSI Identify, which is a registration service that we're providing for construction products. Oceanus is a cooperation of international standards organizations interested in AI ethics with the IEEE, the American standards body, which we're very pleased about, and we've taken over the secretariat of Oceanus this year. And we relaunched the BSI shop in 2021, which was another big step forwards for us. In terms of publishing, perhaps a few highlights to mention. ISO 50005 is an energy management system standard guidelines aimed at SMEs. And we were really pleased that BEIS offered to support 100,000 free downloads for SMEs of this standard, which will really be a huge support to SMEs trying to get on the ladder, on the net zero transition, starting with energy management. Whistleblowing, that new British standard BS ISO 37002, button battery safety, a PAS 7055, and as I mentioned earlier, the new work on the Built Environment Competence Programme, this particular FLEX fast-track standard on core criteria, we were also launched last year. I think actually one of the biggest opportunities, particularly arising out of COVID, was the work on psychological health and safety at work. We all felt that. We had colleagues who struggled, family members who struggled. So the launch of 45003 on psychological health and safety in work, part of the 45001 series, is surely a huge step forward for the world in terms of management of health and safety at work. Very pleased also that we did so much on the innovation agenda last year. The Innovate UK's National Innovation Strategy was published with multiple references to BSI in it. And that's been the result of many years of work, actually working very patiently with the innovation community, with the National Metrology Institute at NPL, with Innovate UK and UKRI, to see the role of standards as an accelerator of innovation embedded within the national strategy. That was a really big success. And then particular opportunities around the Faraday Battery Challenge has led to the publication of 2 new PAS standards there for energy smart appliances, and also actually in the hydrogen economy, and also a very big program in the connected autonomous vehicles area, the CAV space, on electric EV batteries and battery cells and data management practices. So all about accelerating innovation in these critical new spaces. I was particularly taken with the Future Flight programme. So we know that the UK is trying very hard to develop and has developed concept aeroplanes for a future hydrogen electric flight programme. And our Future Flight work is trying to help support that programme of work at the same time. Susan's mentioned a lot already about sustainability and the net zero transition. 2021 was a really big year. We all could see Glasgow and COP26 coming up towards us, and we put our foot on the electric pedal and pushed extremely fast. And as we took our delegation to COP26, we were very pleased to have the opportunity to work with the UNFCCC and Scottish Government events there, promoting the role of standards, international standards, to accelerate the net zero transition. We launched the campaign that Susan highlighted, the Our 2050 World campaign, an initiative to bring standards organisations together to accelerate their net zero transition. And the latest board meeting for the Our 2050 World was only this week, there with the OECD and the UNFCCC and ISO, of course, bringing organisations around, supporting policymakers to use standards more effectively. The voluntary carbon market has been stumbling for 20 years, and it was Mark Carney who triggered the initiative that's now led to the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market. And really fantastic piece of work there led by Neil Musk to see us embedded as the head of standards in the VCM, supporting the Secretariat of that Integrity Council, which is really, really very exciting. We hope to develop those core carbon principles this year, and that will start to bring integrity to the assurance of that carbon market in a way that's never been achieved before. So COP27 may have some new announcements, both from the R2050 world and from the VCM work to be recognised. The London Declaration, another pivotal contribution last year, where we have triggered that commitment from international standards bodies and national standards bodies to look at the embedding of climate science in their work, and also to the amplification of the voices of those affected by climate change in their systems. That's led to action plans which are being pushed through the organisations now, and then will be implemented then within our own systems. And of course, at the international level, we continue to provide a lot of support, policy leadership, and technical advice to the international standards organisations, ISO to IEC, to CENCELNIC and EDSI, of course, where we hold the UK membership on behalf of UK-based stakeholders, and to support the government, again through DCMS, in the International Telecommunications Union, where we don't represent the UK because it's a UN organisation, but we're very pleased to support UK government in their work there, and we hope very much that will bring the UK to a new position. I've mentioned the General Assembly of ISO in London and the London Declaration in the IEC. We also achieved the completion of the governance review, which may sound technical to all of you, but actually really fundamental to the success of that organisation, that international collaboration around electrotechnical work. And we launched the IEC strategy, which is all about the all-electric world and sustainable development. And we have proposed and been accepted that we will host the IEC General Meeting in 2024 in Edinburgh, where we actually hosted the CENCELNIC meetings a few years ago. We were very pleased in Palermo. I think David Bell, you were particularly pleased in the boards of CEN and CENELEC to see the approval of the new membership category for the UK finally go through after 5 years and 1 day of negotiating with our European partners. We had 66 votes, 66 secret ballots, and 65 were in favour and 1 abstention. So we thought that was a pretty good result. In ETSI also, where we've launched a UK Expert Forum, and we're delighted to try and push our work forward, both in that telecom space. And finally, this is really all about meeting your needs, the members, committee members, subscribing members, stakeholders generally. Worth flagging that 2021 was the year where we celebrated 70 years of consumer involvement. The Consumer and Public Interest Network, as it's now called, celebrated its big birthday last year, which is really very exciting indeed, and is a model for consumer participation in standards globally. We've really used the Flex process very, very deliberately, and perhaps I thought you'd be interested to know that our education expert, Matthew Childs, has his standards show quietly goes from strength to strength. It's now reached 86 countries, with over half of the podcasts being downloaded outside the UK, and you'll find that on all the main podcast channels. But above all, thank you to our subscribing members, to those of you online and in the room, and particularly to our committee members and the experts and chairs, without which none of this would be possible at all. So thank you all. It is, as I've often said, not about meeting standards. It's all about using standards more effectively. Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you, John. I'm going to hand back to you for the AGM. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan and Scott. Whilst that was going on, we waited for 30 minutes, and we were yet to have 10 persons entitled to vote personally present, and therefore, in accordance with Article 42 of the bylaws, I adjourned the meeting. You didn't feel a thing, I know, until 4:35. If a quorum is not present by 4:50, which is only 5 minutes away now, our bylaws will allow us to treat the meeting as quorum with the members present and proceed with the formal business of the meeting. However, you don't get a rest, because in that meantime, I'd be happy to take any questions, and I'll call on my board colleagues to assist with any answers needed. For those in the room, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise a hand and a microphone will magically appear at your side. I have a couple of questions online already, but I'll wait and see if anybody would like to start from inside the room. Yes, please. If you just wait for the microphone, then the people online can hear as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Andrea Bedard-Smith, Chair of the British Standards Society. For those of you who don't know, we're the Standards Users Group in the UK. First of all, just thank you for a very good presentation and really pleased to see the financials looking so good, particularly the pension fund, which has been in a minus for, I can't really remember how long time. But just a question for Scott, as usual. You mentioned designated standards in your presentation. Of course, that really flicked up in my mind the Queen's speech last week and the announcement that the government intends easing their ability to change some of the legislation we've inherited from the EU. Of course, some of that sits behind our designated standards, as you know. And some of you may not know, hopefully everybody does know, that when we were members of the EU, if legislation changed in the EU, a mandate was sent from the EU to send Senelec to produce a standard, harmonised standard, suitably. We don't have that system anymore. The government doesn't send us mandates, as we know. So I really wondered what you'd got in place to ensure that should the government change some of the legislation behind our designated standards, how we flag up to our committees that something has changed, that they really need to swing into action and change the standard that's appropriate to that topic.
Well, Andrew,
definitely your question.
Andrew, thank you. It's an excellent question, and it goes to the heart of the new regime in which we're operating in Great Britain. We are working very closely with BEIS on the designation process. And of course, as far as we're concerned, it's a two-way conversation. So we will keep them appraised as to the work that's happening in the European context, where we are committed to adopting those standards, working on them through our committees and then adopting them. But also, if there is new UK legislation, for example, in product safety, where there may be a requirement for a standard, which the UK government wants to signpost in some way, then we would be delighted, obviously, to talk. We will talk with them about what we have, what we're doing, and perhaps to suggest in the similar kind of parallel way to the way the European Commission invites the European standards bodies to produce a standard, to produce that standard for them. But if there is an international European standard already in development, we'll say, well, here's one that may well serve your purpose. So I'm anticipating that we will be in a role where we're receiving, in conversation with them, receiving requests to support the development of new legislation, provided it's not conflicting with international standards, and we'll have that conversation. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to serve both these regimes, and not least for the reasons of Northern Ireland. So,
good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got a couple of questions that have come through online anonymously, despite my pleas earlier, but I'm going to do them anyway. And the first one is, what are the Q1 2022 financials looking like? And given that we've had our board meeting this morning and gone through the Q1 financials, I can tell you we're looking pretty healthy. Everything's in good shape. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, because at the end of one quarter, you never know how things are going to turn out. But so far, things are making progressively as we did last year, and the organisation and the business is in good shape. And then, associated with that, how is BSI going to cope with high global inflation, especially in countries where inflation is out of control? Well, inflation's always out of control, more or less, but we economists, as I used to be, like to think we have some influence on it. I am a rare beast now. I am one of those people who has lived and worked through high inflation early in my career, and therefore we are watching inflation very carefully. It's very complex, and if whoever submitted the question would like to get in contact, we can have a 3-hour seminar on how we're going to deal with inflation around the world. But bear in mind, just be reassured, we're watching very carefully, and we respond positively and constructively to make sure that we remain healthy at all times. Question which I think will probably be shared between you, and that is, what is BSI's position on doing business in Russia? Susan, perhaps you could start.
Yes, let me start, and then I'll hand over to you, Scott, perhaps to talk about the standards side of things. Obviously, we are deeply concerned by the shocking attack on Ukraine and the escalation of the conflict. And we've just got compassion for everyone that's caught up in this awful thing around the world, especially those impacted who are caught in a situation that's completely out of their control, not of their choosing. I should say that we have doubled our annual charitable donations, including some specific donations for Poland, because obviously this conflict is affecting the entire area. The second thing that I would say from a business perspective, thankfully we have no one in Ukraine, but we do have just over 20 colleagues in Russia. And clearly there we've been watching and reacting to the situation as it's unfolded. In March, we had to stop providing our regulatory services because we couldn't perform the duties required of a conformity assessor of medical devices, which includes being able to go and do unannounced audits. And that became impossible because we were using people that had to fly in for Russia from out of Russia, and that was no longer possible. So we've already stopped that. And in our assurance business, which is the larger portion of our business in Russia, the accreditation body that we use in Russia is called ANAB, and ANAB have now determined that it's not possible for us to use their accreditation. So we've had to stop our accreditation and also our product certification, in fact, in Russia. So at the moment, we've stopped all activity from a Russian perspective, and we're working out what our next steps are. But obviously a horrible situation.
I think it's worth saying that in our early discussions, we had a clear priority of looking after our staff, our clients, in the first order, and that's the way we've reacted.
Absolutely.
Scott?
Yes, thank you. And on the standards development side, it's really an international story. I've talked to the Secretary General of both ISO and IEC, and their boards obviously have discussed this. And the decision is that we cannot treat any member of the ISO and IEC family on political grounds. There isn't a requirement. We can't do that, and therefore it would start to fragment the international system. So we have asked, and Russia has withdrawn from its chairs and secretariats of all its international committee work in ISO and in IEC, and that's the way it stands at the moment, and we support that position. So the technical committees are continuing to do their work, but chairs that were Russian or secretariats that were held by Russia have been suspended, and their activities are being carried out by ISO and IEC, Central Office, Central Secretariat, independently.
Okay, are there any further questions in the room? There are none online. So, as I explained earlier, we've now waited the requisite amount of time required by our bylaws, and we now may treat the meeting as quorate and proceed with the formal business. Before moving to this year's resolutions, I can update you regarding the membership subscription rates. No price rises will be implemented for bands 0 to 5, which will remain at the 2021 rates. In the current economic climate, it's proposed that price increases of 2.5% will be implemented across membership bands 6 to 10 and 4% across membership bands 11 and above. Price rises will affect new members from June 22 and renewals from August 22. As required by our bylaws, we will also circulate these rates for your information. We now proceed to the formal business of the meeting. I will take as read the notice of the meeting sent to all members dated 12th of April 22. Like last year, voting will again be done by way of a poll on each of the resolutions set out in the notice rather than a show of hands. This means all members have had the opportunity to participate in decision-making and have their votes recorded. In addition to the votes of members who've submitted proxy votes by post or email, we've counted the poll votes of the members of the board. Actually, we can show these online now because there are no votes in the room. As you can see, the votes delivered to the company for and against each resolution are shown on the screen, and I can therefore declare each of the resolutions carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the formal business of this annual general meeting. Before we close, I can take any final questions anybody may have. But if there are none, and I see none, I thank you all for attending and for your continued support of the British Standards Institution. and I now declare the 2022 AGM closed. Thank you.